as we go. And so part of our engagement as stakeholders is taking a real look at that and making suggestions and knowing what we're prioritizing. An example of that we did last year is we felt that it was really urgent that La Jolla Elementary and Santa Rita Elementary have a full-time counselor each. And so the committee, working through and then with the board, we determined that eliminating having the Monterey Arts Council provide art services for our elementary students would be the offset that would allow us to have a full-time counselor at each of those high needs elementary schools. So those are the kind of adjustments that we have to make now that we're fully funded. And we always hope, of course, it comes in a little over budget planning. And we can always make a contingency plan for should that happen. Where would we put those dollars, right? Now, when we talk about the LCAP, this other long sheet that I have is just for you to understand. So when we adopt a 3-year plan, and the board has to adopt it by June 30th, so that's our timeline that we're on, is to get a proposed plan to the board that they would adopt, and then we send it to the County Office of Education, and they send it on to CDE after they've approved our plan. There are overall 10 priorities. However, local education agencies, like a school district, have to meet 8 of those 10. You'll see that a couple in here have priority 9 and priority 10 are specific to county offices of education, but I thought it was important to include it here so you know that overall, because county offices also have to make an LCAP, and those are 2 that are specific to them. Now, this document breaks it down in terms of the 3 main areas that an LCAP should look at, which are your conditions for learning, your engagement activities, and the outcomes for pupils or students, right? And so it reorders the priorities in terms of which area do they most fit in with. And I thought it would be nice just to put this out so people can go, okay, so when we have to meet all 8 of our required priorities, and when we write our explanation of how the services are meeting them, we include those things.
Can we help you? All right. Are you looking for the LCAP meeting?
Sí, ¿está buscando la junta de alfa?
Sí.
Así, aquí. Si quiere. Necesitan traductor, ¿verdad? Sí. Traduciendo. Volumen para revisar.
That's where we're at? All right.
That's our copy. Get your divider plate.
Está en español. Y este es lo de arriba es en inglés y lo de abajo es en español.
If you want to kind of catch up a little bit, so we went through that a little bit and then what the priorities are.
We don't need this, right?
No,
You're fine. No, go ahead. Okay.
So ahorita nada más empezó la document is that as you said, this is very generic. So la
This is
all
just
for people. So it's not like ingresos que tienen de diferentes casos, lugares que no
I'm sure today you can. Yesterday you didn't even care about it. Didn't even know if you had this thing.
Did you not put it? I have
Pero de todas maneras, todo lo que es escrito en esta vez, ya está llevado
All right, we're ready.
Okay. So for the new template, which CDE has not actually published just yet, It was supposed to come out the first week in January. So we're in 4 or 5 now, 10 or 20.
We're the last week. We're at the end of the road here.
Yes. So, our document service is hoping that it will in fact be published next week. And so at our next meeting, we can review the actual template. But I wanted to talk about some of the things that the state's hoping to do with the new template. And the first thing being, can I use yours and let them go? So we're just gonna talk a little bit about that actually. The first thing is they want to simplify the LCAP and make it easier to understand. So right here. So they're looking at the language that's used and how the budget overview for parents looks, that long first sheet, and maybe simplifying that a little more even. This year was the first year they did that. And so it's like kind of a pilot for that. And then they're looking at a way of prioritizing the goals and our priorities, which is what they did here by putting them in those 3 areas. So we have a little taste of what kind of things they're trying to do to just sort of streamline it. Doing an expenditure table under each action rather than at the end of the document so that you can see for each action what the expenditures are and you don't have to scroll through and to find it. So that was another one that they're looking to do. And that will help shorten the LCAP some too.
Well, the LCAP was originally created to create transparency and actually worse. Right.
And then the next one is looking at our increased or improved services summary. And because what the feedback CDE has gotten is it's difficult for people to tell if something has been increased or improved, or is it just a continuation? So they want to put some functionality in there to allow for it to be more clear. And then the next piece is about making sure that it's very clear which actions in the LCAP are specific for our English learners. Right now, it's just a small checkbox that you put. And so they want to make it more easy to understand which actions are geared specifically towards our English learners. And the last requirement will be that what districts and county offices of education post their website, or they post their LCAP in a prominent position on their website. Haven't defined what that is, but it probably means right on your front page, easy to find, right? And so it's mostly all the changes with the template are making it easier to understand and easier to find and to see where the services are going and to be able to track the dollars if you're a parent or community member or staff member. So, I've shuffled these papers so many times, I've lost my agenda.
We've done very well. I think we've done a welcome. We've talked about what is the LCAP. We did a budget review, very brief,
Yes.
and it's done very well and very clear. We can talk about reviewing our district goals tonight, or we can save that for the next meeting too, depending.
Okay. Can we just get one more introduction so we know who else here? So I'm the assistant superintendent for the district.
I'm the assistant principal of Gavilan View. Mike, what's your
Principal de aquí del estado de Gavilan y ella es la asistente superintendente, una de esas alternativas.
Nicole Jensen, the technology coordinator for the district.
Es la coordinadora de tecnología del distrito, Nicole Jensen.
Principal of Gavilan View, Bonnekamp.
La principal de aquí de Gavilan View,
Phoebe Derby, Director of Special Education and Student Services.
internet, directora de educación especial, estudiantes, servicio de estudiantes.
Karen Chavez, teacher on special assignment at Lincoln Elementary.
Karen Chávez, que es una maestra en proyectos especiales de McKenna.
O sea, diseño, soy maestro de pintura ¿no?
Lenny Crouch, I teach first grade at Ohio Elementary.
Ella es maestra de primer grado en la Joya. Sí, usted le toca. ¿Cuál es su nombre?
Lilia Reyes.
Lilia Reyes. Ella es
Soy mamá de un estudiante
de cuál escuela?
de la New Republic.
Okay, she's a parent from New Republic.
Great.
Awesome.
Bring some friends next time.
Que se traigan unos amigos. Ya saben.
We prefer to be discussing this with the community and not with just employees of the district.
Ya, porque quieren que sea algo de la comunidad, que los padres estén al pendiente de lo que está pasando con el niño, que se adaptan con los estudiantes. Entonces, le puede decir a la gente para los siguientes años.
So I think because it's such a small group and we kind of move through everything pretty quickly, are there any questions about what we've talked about so far? Or how could we help clear anything up? Yeah.
Sorry, so our LCAP funds, the parents, music, PE, and, the counselors. What else does it fund in our schools?
So there's 21 classroom teachers who are funded out of the LCAP. Basically the entire ed technology department. So your technology specialist, the coordinator for ed technology, your library and media techs. There's 6 of those. Music, PE, TOSAs, vice principals, counselors, yard duties or campus supervision,
The
the kindergarten paraprofessionals,
coaches.
the athletic coaches for elementary and middle school are also funded through the LCAP.
The after-school programs.
The after-school stipends, yes. It's not like I wrote it.
Sorry.
Right. No, totally, I did.
Good question.
The after-school tutoring stipends are also, in terms of people who, the majority of the funds in the LCAP are towards people.
Transportation.
Our field trips, transportation for those field trips, our middle school science camps, our character counts materials, our technology, so Chromebooks for students, Chromebooks and laptops and desktops for teachers. Our parent components, all around goal 3, so parent resource center activity classes. I'm starting to talk too fast, so I'll slow it down. So, any of those activities, like we've sent parents to the CABE conference, things like that. A lot of PD for teachers. So those 30 hours of PD you can access, LCAP. And also including the cost of any of those, like some of the classes have a cost associated with it, or if teachers attend a conference, that comes out of LCAP as well as some of our supplemental instructional materials and supplies, as well as supplies for art, music, and PE.
But a good question. It makes me think about maybe we should do some type of just easy to read public document. These are items that parents understand, like counseling services.
Like in terms, we should, for our next meeting, maybe that's what we should put together,
Yeah.
is a list of the types of positions that are funded through the LCAP, and then extra services for students, like after-school tutoring, field trips,
Yeah.
those kinds of things.
It's connected to this part, right?
It is,
Yeah,
that's
so it'd be a
it.
good
So
spot
that's
for it.
7.6 million, right? And lay out what they are, how much is in material and supplies, how much are in salaries, how much are in extra hourly stuff or stipends for like our coaches or the after-school tutoring, things like that. And we can put that together for our next meeting. I think that'd be beneficial.
Can you touch base on how, when the possibly duplicated, when they're duplicated, say non-duplicated?
Okay. So for the we mentioned earlier, and just to clarify, for this, what generates our LCAP is our unduplicated count. So a student who qualifies for free and reduced lunch, English learners, homeless and fostering youth, they are what's called unduplicated. They only count for one of those. So I might, for instance, have a student who is on free and reduced lunch, who is an English learner, who's also in foster care. But we don't get funded 3 times for that student, we get funded once.
We should.
Does that kind of clear it up?
You can't duplicate student counts for programming.
Even
which is a
though
shame.
oftentimes our students are in more than one of those categories.
And there are programs and services, those areas that require a pretty hefty cash flow to maintain, right? In terms of like transporting foster youth or, free and reduced level.
Yeah.
They're costly systems to the school system. Truancy.
Yes.
How do you maintain all of that? It's not an easy task.
So that's how that revenue is generated, and the LCAP plan is specifically for that money, which right now is the $7.6 million for the current year.
So, eso es lo que genera el dinero para el solo se está diciendo es para que
Correct.
So some districts receive very little LCAP funding or no LCAP funding. So, and there are districts in neighboring counties. I looked at one, and their LCAP is very, very small because it's based on that unduplicated count. So if you're a district that has a very small number of unduplicated students, your LCAP is a very small dollar amount. You still have to make one.
If we had $6 million, this would be too good.
So,
What the enrollment package are so tedious.
yes,
Collecting that initial enrollment data from students, whether their demographics is now critical for funding for school districts, as well as attendance, which is
It
a
is.
separate issue, but put them together to increase our funding.
And I've heard people saying, our LCAP funding can go like that. How likely is that then if it's based on these?
okay. It's a good question. I was asked a variety of this earlier today. So before the LCAP, we had categorical funds, right? So you had funding for foster youth, you had funding for Title I students, you had
State
funding
saved money.
for this. And so it was small pots, and you had to make different plans for each of those, right? And so what the state did is they said, all right, if we just take all of those categorical dollars that we're sending to districts based on the same unduplicated students, but more specific little pots of money, and put them together, we can actually make this an easier to understand and more transparent process. And it's easier on districts to use the funds appropriately. So the LCAP model, the local control funding formula, if the state of California decided we're gonna go back to categoricals, the same funds would come to the district. It would just convert to a different model of funding. So it's not that. Now, in terms of the LCAP being funded less, that's possible.
Yeah, but it's not just gonna completely
And
go
the
away next year.
possibility for that is our unduplicated student count drops. So right now, each year for the last, I've been here 5 years, and this is our first year that the LCAP is what the state deems fully funded. Meaning they were trying to get back to those, and no joke, 2008.
So that's my question. So is it fully funded 2008 levels, or has it been adjusted for inflation?
No, the state doesn't, no. It's what the state calls fully funded, the 7.6, right? And so what our plan is to plan on this year's numbers. or something very, very similar. If we end up with 30 more unduplicated students next year than we have this year, the funding will increase by the amount that's sent for unduplicated students. Should we end up with 30 less, it would decrease by that same amount. So we're within a range that I feel confident saying we can plan on a similar number to what we have now. And so what we have to do moving forward is look at what we currently fund, how well we feel like that's working. And if there's something else we want to bring in, is there an offset and something we want to lower or eliminate, or because it's all within this budget now? Like I'm not going to expect $500,000 more next year than we had last year. I'm going to expect a number very close to this.
Is there any way to anticipate what those new housing, what kind of people might be coming into those and how that might affect our LCAP?
No. They based our potential possible enrollment just about the development and anticipating the students that move in there. We do know that they have designated 11% of the housing in that development to be low-income housing.
When all of Salinas averaging income.
Which I believe is the state minimum for when you make a development. There's a minimum that you have to have for low-income housing when your number of units.
But you have to plan for 20%, but they don't have to do it.
Sure. So, the short answer is no. The long answer is a little we can anticipate. And we can look at our current demographics and sort of have a plan on how that would be. And then it's all within ratio, right? Now, instead of 6 schools, we have 9, right? And so while the dollar may go up, what we do is
But
still
the staff
within
is
it.
still the higher.
And so it would probably actually come into effect if we're meeting with this group again 3 years from now. We might have our site in the, being built and working that out, something like that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hopefully.
So if we could go ahead, I wanted us to work on a little activity together and then maybe chat about it a little bit. I didn't hand this one out yet. Activity. Did you get it? Got one? Okay. So part of our process as we go is how are we currently doing for our students? Because the LCAP ultimately is about our students. While we may fund different staff members, teachers, paras, things like that, the reason they're there is to help close the achievement gap for those students they serve. So everything that this plan has to do ultimately is coming around to student success. So if we were to answer these questions about right now, and if everyone can just take a moment and fill out your sheets, put your opinions on there. So how are Santa Rita students doing now? So is the community receiving easily accessible and understandable data on student outcomes? How are students doing along a broad array of outcomes? What are the most pressing needs and priority areas? And then what are the unique assets in our district or schools or the broader community that could help support improving student outcomes?
Gonna need that quarterback.
Maybe just stop carrying.
Como que, por ejemplo, como los estudiantes tienen como números, como por ejemplo aquí, donde dice que la parte de los niños que van a estudiar en su primer lenguaje, como la escuela, ahí no es como clases de cuando los niños que van a entrar a los países de
Como por su hija tiene, se puede poner esto. Ahorita
sobre todo los niños que van más.
y se lo entiende. So, ahorita pueden poner esto aquí. Y la sugerencia es que hablemos de esto. Vamos a hablar de esto. Pero sí entiendo lo que están hablando.
Crisp and clear. Across the street. You're so
Did I cheat? I just wrote down what
I would
shopping
have cheated, but
was.
I can't read his handwriting.
y que puede hacer la comunidad para ayudar a mejorar el resultado de sus estudiantes. ¿Cree usted que por las escuelas en la comunidad en la misma persona?
I hated those at school because I was a cheater. I cheated all the time.
I was a considerada programa el programa es de los niños van aprendiendo, ellos hacen preguntas, respuestas.
Pero lo que no es
Yeah, right.
o es
como que
Okay.
este programa, por ejemplo, este programa, yo también me en otra escuela, en esta otra escuela, y le dan ese programa para hacerlo,
I started 16.
I think they're.
It's not that I had to write about it. We're meeting. Just go.
hace cuenta como juegos educacionales, ¿verdad?
Okay, porque ese programa nomás creo que el niño lo tiene en la escuela, no para no
So, niños que dan
en la escuela.
y los tienen que buscar en la escuela. Okay.
All right. So the data, the easily accessible and understandable data on student outcomes. How are we doing? How are Santa Rita students?
The data is easily accessible. It's whether or not the community can interpret it. As with everything else that the California Department of Education does. In their mind, it's viewed as being very simplistic, but really it's not, which is why, as a school district, we work hard to make sure those things are shared out, like in Cafecitos, ELAC meetings, site council meetings, every opportunity we get to share it with the community, we want to do that in those early stages of those meetings with those groups at the beginning of the school year. I know that the individuals that are facilitating that at their school sites are discussing that email data. I think the dashboard is good, but our parents need help understanding. You could spend a whole cafecito talking about the dashboard, right? Like it's available to everyone.
That's what I put. I put that I think we could do better explaining the direction of the dashboard, like a cafecito time, showing them how and what it looks like. I think for people in education, it's pretty easy to understand the data and disseminate and click on something and go, okay, I see what that's taking me to. But I'm not sure it's that easily understandable to parents, which is one of the groups it was created for. So I think we could do better on how to spend time and show our parents that. So those of us in the biz probably have something along those lines. How do we, what'd you say?
I just said that the existing modes of sharing the information are a little cumbersome, so simplifying it, having less digital resources on hand that have the same data in like a easy to hand out one pager, you know,
And that might be,
by site or by district or.
I know for teachers communicating with the parents during their parent-teacher conference, that's where we get the most impact, like, so that individual parent knows how their child's doing. But pulling the scores from the state that way, and the teachers are even, you know, there's some interpretation going through the report off with the parent, because the parents won't, they don't know how to look at it, so teachers will go over the data with the parents.
I wish there were more opportunities for teachers to meet with students, families to discuss that with them. Because right now, it's getting up here, it seems more like a general meeting, like, oh, this is what I see about your child, what is your response to that, how to get more background. Yes, at least for students who fall into criteria, as EOs, foster youth, or homeless, who generally struggle more academically because of all that other stuff they have to deal with, have that opportunity to meet with them.
¿Quién se por ustedes esta pregunta? She just put yes on her paper, pero ¿quiere decir algo más de esta pregunta?
Sí, o sea, yo, por ejemplo, yo tengo una reunión con la maestra y es la que me dice en la reunión, le pregunto yo cómo va mi hija, y sí, me dice, o sea, en qué va bien, en qué va mal, qué es lo que, en qué tengo que apoyarla en casa para que, dependiendo del resultado,
So she's saying that in her parent-teacher
yo
conference,
con la mamá.
she feels that it is a good opportunity because if she has any question about her specific student, if there's any areas that the teacher might recommend to try to do something at home with the child, then she takes it into consideration. It's a good way of communications so far.
And I think realistically, people, a small percentage of the community is really interested in overall test scores. Parents are interested in their child. And so when they have access to the teacher, or as much access as they can, or, you know, that's really what they are interested in.
That's why it's important to have those scores at parent-teacher conference. It's really, you know, to go over that. They want to know really, it's hard to go over the website to see how do I find my child? But then often might communicate with the parent right there.
And that's the struggle for parents with the dashboard, because it's the broad.
They're not interested how
It doesn't show
all
their student.
foster youth is doing.
It's true, that's more for us.
Jose, was there anything else that you have?
I just, because I thought it was mostly about how to inform parents about the LCAP and stuff
Sure,
like that.
anything.
And so I just said one day, like, I went onto the LCAP because that was part of my class, and it was very stressful for me. And I was reading it, I had to read it a lot of times, because I felt like you kind of repeat it sometimes, and then I felt like, didn't I already read that? And then I would have to go back, and then I felt a little bit like insecure, because I was reading it, I was just, why am I not understanding? So I feel like it could feel like that for the parents as well, and I wish there were kind of like more stuff like this, like where it's easier to understand exactly where everything is going, so I can just see the picture. So I can, and not just, and I can use the words and then match the pictures and understand that a little bit better as a parent.
I'm
also.
hoping with the template where you're gonna have the budget piece with each action, that will help.
Yeah.
Because otherwise you really are going from one page and then you're like, wait, I think that. You have to scroll back and find it and then go back to where you were, and it's cumbersome, even if you have an idea of what you're looking for.
Yeah.
So.
And listing the services, how that money, how that funds, and what are we doing within that category? What is funded through that category, and listing it off would be more beneficial.
And the report card.
I know, but honestly, it is something that parents, they don't know 1, 2, 3, 4. They don't know. Yeah, and they know it's gonna be put on hold.
Well, when I look at my son's, because he's at Fultonals, and I look at his, it's really easy, because it's like, how are his grades and how he's doing, and then I also have access to seeing his grades through the computer, because every day I'm like, show me your grades, show me your grades. And then if I slack off, and then a week goes by and I don't see or go online, and then I can see what's missing and all that stuff, and I can help them with that. So that's great for my kids in the middle school, but at the elementary level, you don't have access to any of that. So you don't have access to how your child is doing unless you go speak to the teacher.
We have potential to change that and access additional functionality in areas.
And I think parents,
If we, especially if we get a better report card template in the system where an elementary teacher can link an assignment to a particular standard on their report card.
You can do that, it's just not the right.
Right.
I worked in a district where we went back to letter grades for elementary kids because parents just could not, like, I don't know what a 3 means, a 2, a 4, but they know what an A minus means, they know what a B plus is.
and then you would have more parents probably coming in because they would clearly understand what that means and
If
what's
they see a
happening,
D,
and
they're like,
then go in.
right? If they see a 1,
And that conversation can be brought back to the table as well. The person having that conversation.
And I just, consistency between grade levels too, at sites between what is a 1, because in first grade, our high frequency words, we test them based on the words they know now, but then third grade does it based on the whole year. It's inconsistent. A 1 in third grade is acceptable if you know more in first grade. It's, red flag.
It's, I'm being interested in what she thinks of the report cards.
Entonces, por ejemplo, yo como padre, como madre, pensé que nos dijeran, o sea, no esperar hasta la junta, porque tenemos que esperar hasta que tenemos junta con la maestra para saber cómo van nuestros hijos, si nos pueden mandar a la casa o poder escribir en computadores para saber cómo va, porque nos tenemos que esperar hasta la junta.
También ella, y se puede decir, pero también es una pregunta ella de usted como padre cuando le dan la carta de los grados, ¿es algo fácil de entender o se le complica un poquito?
La carta de los grados de las calificaciones. Sí, se me complica.
So she's saying, like, when I told so when I mentioned his thing that he does go and check his son's grades, she said that that would be a great idea because they have to wait until the parent conferences, and then sometimes if they have questions and she forgets because she does have to wait, and it would be ideal to look at that specific day, what they did and how they did, so that they can catch it on early on if there's anything wrong that shouldn't help and things like that, so.
How about the report card?
It does get complicated for her. Que eso se le hace complicado como los números que miran las calificaciones o no entiende qué significa cada número o qué es lo que se le hace.
Pues dice 1 que va abajo, ¿no? 2, si es eso. Dice 1 va abajo.
She's asking, but she's asking, like, does it work like if it's like a 1 it's low or 3 it's high, or how does?
That's exactly.
Eso es lo que
we don't
está
know
diciendo.
either, just so you know.
It's not the same as an A, B, C, D, F, like we knew as students, when we were students, where you had an A plus, A, B plus, it's not the same. It's how the students are doing on their grade level standards. And a 4 means they've exceeded the standards, and a 3 is they've met. And a 2 is they've nearly met.
And they're approaching.
And
Okay.
1 is hasn't met, below standard.
So como, so dice como ellos, como ejemplo, porque yo
Well, that's what I mean, that's why. You know, it's, the irony of all of that is like, in terms of like curriculum, right? We've got a lower primary curriculum, right? That's not the fun part of but we've overcomplicated the grading process for a kindergarten year. But then when they get to middle school, there's like nothing.
Super easy.
And
I mean, not that it's,
but
like, for me to understand.
So the content is far more complicated of what you do with an eighth
And
grade.
parents
Right.
don't think that they can see that we had a really good exam in elementary, right? And this,
Yeah.
but the outcome is a bit more confusing than.
Not only that, but as a parent, I have more communication at the middle school because I'm able to understand exactly what's missing or ask my son, why do you have a missing assignment here? Or why hasn't this been graded? And then he tells me, oh, it hasn't been graded. And so then I email the teacher and I say, this hasn't been graded, or these assignments aren't graded, my son has a D, but they haven't been graded. And the teacher then communicates back, oh yes, I haven't graded those things, but they will be graded. And then by the end of the day, it's graded and the grade goes back up. So there is a communication from parent to teacher, and it also holds the teacher accountable. And it holds me accountable, because if I'm being accountable to look at the grades, and the teacher is accountable of making sure the grades are inputted. In elementary, not elementary.
Well, and I feel in elementary, our social and emotional reporting is just a little tiny box.
Yeah.
And
it should be the biggest one.
it should be the biggest one, really, yes. And we kind of
That's my
need
whole.
Another student today.
So for our second question, how are students doing along a broad array of outcomes, and what are the most pressing needs and priority areas?
I can
Start here.
Yeah, I know what the school side's gonna say. I bet you we all have the same
Let's see
answer.
what our parents
So, ¿qué puso usted para esta? ¿Para la segunda pregunta?
¿Cómo lo haces?
Ah,
Pues yo quedé como cuando su hija, como es su primer idioma español, hubieron
So as her comment about this question, the way she understood it was, since her, está en primer grado, ¿verdad? Her daughter is in first grade, but she is a English learner, so she knows that there's other districts that have specific programs that are bilingual or things like that, that she feels that would be a need in our district for there to be more help, either more tutors or one-to-one on the student that's really struggling with trying to learn English, so that's it.
So a stronger English learner programming for those students, right?
And I did put, we have a lot of newcomers coming in and only speaking Spanish. And they're,
Or mystical.
or Mixteco, or many different languages, actually. And we actually need to maybe have a ELD teacher who's, even though all the teachers teach ELD, but maybe a class that they could go to for a little part of the time to get some intensive support for the students, like newcomers, you know,
What would they be
A
missing
newcomer
from
class.
right, right.
Other districts.
But if they're newcomers, what are they not able to access? Right? So I have a master's in teaching EL, and I'm a firm believer that we need to have a monolingual newcomer. If you thought of yourself being plopped down in a country where you didn't know the language, but you needed to sit in classes all day that were taught in that language that you don't know, would it be more helpful for you to have a few weeks of a program of intensive,
So you're
whatever
not
language it
completely
is,
pulling out for that.
so that when you get back in there, you actually are able to
Yeah.
access
Like if it was like,
what's going on?
I thought they were gonna be like, oh, like at Friday, these kids are gonna be pulled out for only an hour, but if it's like at the beginning, yeah, just an intensive, okay, let's kind of get you the basics.
And there's different models. There's where you're pulled out for a portion of your day to get daily intensive English. I've seen it where they do, it's like a few weeks of sheltered English immersion, where it's really intensive English learning, to get you some basic knowledge so that when you go out, then the scaffolds that your classroom teacher are able to put in place help you access more of the actual content that's going on.
Yeah.
And then, of course, there's always the different varieties of bilingual education that can be put in place. Sometimes it's still an English, you can say like an English immersion environment, but with bilingual support to get you there. So,
I just think of like little students at my state who get pulled out for speech, they get pulled out for OT, they get pulled out for this, they get pulled out for that. And they miss so much bonding time with their classmates, not just learning the content, it's getting that collaboration, and even if they can't communicate well, they still get that social emotional.
Okay.
Someone else said the same thing, but we didn't.
Kids are stressed out.
They are, for all different kinds of reasons too.
Los niños, porque creo que como los niños están un poco más atrasados por un niño de los niños, como apoyarlos, ¿no? A esos niños.
So she's saying, so for those students that have that disadvantage, that don't understand the language while they're going, they're behind in the course itself. So she would like a little bit more support for those kind of students that need the help, that do get the material, but just not because of the language.
Right.
Porque a veces que ellos apoyan a los niños que están un poco más avanzados, pero a los más atrasados.
So she's saying, because she sees that sometimes the kids that are more advanced get more support than the kids that are not as advanced.
Interesting. In my department, I feel the opposite. I just feel like that's all I do is give support, right?
Where Galen view,
Interesting.
our EL1s increased so much last year that you were able to fund another. Yeah. And
And it's steadily
For
going.
special education, at first, special education.
Okay. So for that one, I was thinking of more after-school programs for the kids, and then I thought computer classes, because in fifth grade and here, with these students, I have to start from the beginning. And I was hoping maybe there could be funding for a computer teacher at the sites, only because the students don't know how to use the computers. Like, they have computers and it's one-to-one, and that's great, but they didn't know how to use them, and so I have to teach all of that, and that eats up my time of what I wanted to do. And
we're seeing it too.
So, and my after-school program then became that. It was project-based learning, but they didn't really know how to do a lot on the computer, so it started from, I started with a Google driver's license, so the basics of Google for the kids. The after-school program for about 11 of my students. But what about the other ones that I have during the day? And so teaching them after school, and then they would then teach the kids throughout the day. And so that's where we were starting at, so I was hoping that something like that, especially when they're taking the test online, and they don't really know that, like the little stuff that comes out on the side that could help them, they don't really know how to use or navigate those. And so I was thinking maybe we could do more funding for that.
I think they know how to play games.
Yes, they do.
And I think the mistake that we made, not just for Stanley, but in general as educators, right? Is that we're making the assumption that this generation just knows how to use technology. They can use their thumbs real quick.
Yeah.
And they can play games. And we got away from the old fashioned like tech labs or computer labs, which I agree, because you can do it in the classroom, and you had somebody that could come around and just, do a computer.
Just copy and paste wasn't a skill for a lot of them, and I was just like,
So
wow.
they know how to log into the program, they know
Yeah.
how to look at Lexia, they know how to do that, and
Yes.
actually use real technology skills.
And especially, I mean, it's great because they have the computers, but I just wish that they have the knowledge of how to really use them.
Trying to get my kids my first graders to refresh a page today, that was okay, we're gonna talk, everything that looks like a C with an arrow, it looks like a circle. Let's click that, see what it does.
And the terminology too. I think teachers also need the training of the terminology as well, and the language, the vocabulary, not just, oh, click that. It's like teaching them the vocabulary of the computers, yes, because that's part. I think that's also a fifth grade standard. I think it's knowledge, something in there is in fifth grade.
I also put down, like socio-emotional education programming, not just like counseling and stuff that when a student's in need, but actual education in how to maneuver life for a lot of our kids these days. It's different. It's different than when we were kids, or even when I began teaching 20 years ago, it's different.
Parent engagement, social emotional health, functioning behaviors for students, social interactions with peers, because you didn't get the tip ball, you should not be melting down.
But to me, we're to the point where that needs to be
Right,
the
they have to
taught.
teach them, they're not being taught, they're what to do.
Yeah,
they really don't engage well socially at all, even in their basic problem solving.
So I feel that there's, the reason there's such a need for that is nowadays we're growing up in a society that kids are not running outside of the houses and meeting with their friends down the street.
Like after school
program.
She's asking, do they do any like music or things like that? Like, for example, I heard she's in the first grade, like,
Did, music and PE during the day. And I know some of the schools are doing like different kinds of after-school programming, like the computer class. La Jolla, they do, one of the teachers does a music class after school. I know at New Republic, they do some project-based learning stuff after school.
is everything after school or during?
Music and PE we have during the school day. So we have a music teacher.
Música y educación física es durante el día.
And the classroom teachers do art as part of their curriculum.
Y los maestros sí tienen arte, sí enseñan arte.
But they're electives in middle school.
They're all electives at middle school though,
Not PE.
except.
Y ya como llegan como
I can have a enrichment activity.
Does not.
It's so weird too, because elementary kids want, you can't give them enough PE, and middle schoolers like me, it's like with the curriculum.
It should be reversed.
So the availability of those after-school programs is heavily based on which teachers can and are willing to stay an additional hour to teach.
So, como les maestra dice que los programas después de escuela es completamente basados en los maestros, porque los maestros son los que los enseñan. Realmente basado en los maestros y se quieren quedar y tener un buen una hora después.
And then now, this year was our first year having the after-school sports for fourth and fifth graders. So we had to start somewhere, so we started with fourth and fifth.
Ahí también nos llegan los primeros, los papás que
She's saying they should have a tutor too for parents that don't know English and
We have
how
done,
to learn.
we have done some at
Started.
other sites, you know, again,
Yes.
it depends kind of on the site and the need for, all of our schools are wonderful, but they're all so different in needs demographically with students, with parents, but we have had some English classes for parents at
We
other
did.
school sites.
We did it, San Rita, we did 2 levels of English, starting the year
maybe
before,
what we
we
should
did
do
level 1 and then we did level 1. Yes.
Let's make sure that this wonderful parents knows that.
Right now, no, but say, Apples to Knowles, John's, Parent Resource Center has some extra computers in there, so people can come in and do Rosetta Stone.
Sign in on
We also have access for our parents with Rosetta Stone, but maybe we need to advertise that other.
She's saying that did they take out the budget for babysitters?
The budget for no, which babysitting for when we have parent meetings?
Did she need one tonight?
So there's a babysitters como
Para los cuidados los niños, como la de adultos, ahí los dejamos los niños con los pero ya no hay ninguna. Todos
When we have meetings, we're not having babysitting.
pues no es cuando hay juntas como ahorita nos hizo que los niños te dice como si le enseñan clases de inglés y tiene babysitters.
Ayer la de adultos sabía, pero ahorita ya no me tocó.
When she went to the adult school and she would get some English classes, they would have the babysitting, and now they took that away.
Oh, at the adults, oh,
Yeah.
you should have to talk to Dan Burns about
La
that.
actividad había, pero ya no hay tampoco inglés.
Okay, pero we had English classes here, would she come?
So, again, eso está diciendo que es en la escuela de adultos, pero no le pasa aquí, ¿verdad? Porque
No.
aquí nomás sería la junta para lo que es el
No.
sistema de Monterrita.
Hay que ser los
But she's saying, pero ella está diciendo que si, por ejemplo, hay oportunidad de ofrecer clases para los padres para que necesitan un poquito más de inglés, usted iría, sería.
Porque quiero aprender, pero no he podido.
Because we've talked with different agencies about being able to offer classes in connection with the adult school and Hartnell.
Okay.
For our parents. And then
Esa ha sido una conversación.
We would
que
have
hemos tenido
childcare.
porque,
There's always
están
somebody
tratando
who's
de
really
hacer
better
una
than
conversación.
Exactly. That's what the talk was. Volunteer about your people. Exactly.
High school students.
It does.
So she would love that idea.
So when we talk about goal 3, she needs to come to our vocab.
So como
And-
para que se anime eso y dejen que los padres están interesados en programas así. Por eso yo quiero dejar saber a la gente que pues, están esas juntas para eso, que quieren que los padres den su opinión de cómo va a ser el dinero, de qué les gustaría a ellos hacer, pero como veo ahorita no necesita usted, eso es difícil de saber qué exactamente necesitan los padres, qué quieren los padres en la comunicación.
Y de todas las escuelas, de todos sus hijos.
Se les manda a todos los padres, a todos. Por eso necesitamos que se hagan las cosas, porque si no. Ya, y ese es un problema de que los
I know
padres.
that's your little. Okay, I'm keeping everybody a little past when we were going to. But what makes our schools and district unique right now? And what else could we access to help support our students?
So, ¿te puso algo para la pregunta? ¿Qué puso para esta?
That's good stuff.
Part of it is the, I think, because of the size of our district, and for inclusive students. It's hard because La Jolla and Cannon have a lot of commuters. I've had kids in the past who couldn't come to after-school programs because their parents don't have a car and school's too far away. So if there were to be more after-school programs, I think trying to offer even just a shorter bus.
A late bus.
Yeah, a late bus to take those kids to be able to get them home.
So she's showing me this application. She has another child in the Gavilan school. So she's saying that, for example, for her son, she likes that, even though we provide a computer, she doesn't know if there's a program where you can type a specific code. And it gives him sort of like an educational applications for games that he can go and practice. Like for her son, she has this specific application. They go home, they type in a code that the school provides, and then they can do those learning applications. And he does actually spend the time to play the games, and it's all educational. So she doesn't know if there's anything that we offer like that, or if that could be something
We
that.
actually have a list.
We do.
Nicole created it, that all of our
And
web-based
so what we
programs.
need to do, we do,
Okay,
is a parent, we need to advertise that more
okay.
so that our parents know.
So dice que sí tienen programas así que pueden hacer en la casa, nada más que es porque no saben de comunicación, entonces el trabajo de ellos sería cómo dejarles saber a ustedes que sí existen.
And with instructions on how to access them, everything. So we just need to communicate that better to the parents, is what I'm hearing.
Ajá.
Do things on our website. That remote.
Where we all
Yes.
And that's what
Clever's kind of like that.
Covers like
But yeah,
They just want to give that.
so nomás you have there. Because she's saying that she asked the teacher, and I believe the teacher told her that it was just when they were in school that they weren't able to take home, so that's,
They can
The
access it.
computer, they don't take home,
but they can access
but they can
applications.
access,
Okay.
there are several
Okay.
apps, learning apps that you have that they can access.
Sí, so entonces, eso dice que las
Right, with Lexia, yeah, but we have so many others that they can be using at home.
A problem that I noticed with my students is that they don't know how to go online and manage their emails. Because at schools, it's always and it gets feedback instant. But when you take that away when they go home, they don't know how to log in. Because they don't know, they don't remember their emails, they don't,
Goes back to the.
and it's just,
Uh-huh.
and it falls apart. And then I literally have to write everything down here.
Please ask questions.
On number 3, we brought in Avid for the middle schools. And there's other opportunities to bring in Avid for our elementaries and for our English learners, which I think would be, at the middle school, would be very beneficial.
Fifth graders are very excited about that, because I talked to them about what Avid is over there at middle school, and they are anticipating going over there and just excited about that. That's something they have to look forward to.
What would be involved in getting outside, not teachers, but other people to do after-school programs?
Money.
Just money? Would you need to get them insurance and all that, just depending on the hours?
So, if you had an outside agency who came in, a lot of times there's a cost, that we would incur. They would need to have, so we had an outside agency coming in to provide a class to our students. They would need to have their insurance and things like that. So there is certain, elements that need to be in place for somebody. If they're working with their students, of course, they have to have fingerprints done, they have to pass all of that, the TB test and things so that they're safe, to work with our students. And there's parameters about supervision and safety that we'd always want to put in place as well.
I was thinking about the last board meeting, how those parents from Santa Rita were asking. I think they wanted after-school programs for babysitting. And it's just, I think, look at my staff, and all of them have children. They can't stay every night till 5 o'clock because they have their own families, and that's their lives, that's fine, but just to make these things more available.
We used to have YMCA many years ago at McKinnon. And the parents paid YMCA.
Yes, yes.
They didn't pay
Yes.
us, right?
And,
So they
and I've-
handled all
and I've
of
seen that in other districts as
Yeah.
well, where
One of the things that Melissa and I have been talking about after our last board meeting was really clarifying with the community. Do you need daycare
Yeah.
or do you need like a real
Do your kids need
structured
help with
academic
something?
program after
Right.
school? Because there's a difference.
I think a lot of our parents are looking for both before and after school care because they're working. And because you're getting up early to do the field trips, that's what the need is.
And if the need is daycare, and that's okay, then that's what we should be calling it. It's that's an extended daycare program and not being, trying to guise it as something that it's not. It's okay to need daycare. You don't have to present it to us like you want some highly driven academic program. That's important too. There was a time Salina City ran a full extended daycare program for all of their elementary sites. And over time, they've had to cut back because of budget cuts.
And it could be academic as well as
Yes.
enrichment. You have an hour structured homework time, and then after your homework's done, you have snack, and then you're out there and going to play before your parent picks you up.
Absolutely.
Like La Jolla, there is no playground in our area, but there's no park. And when I was a little kid, we played at the La Jolla playground on the weekends, because it'd be open, but now because of vandalism and such, we can't do that anymore, security. So that's where someone put kids to play, even if it was just opening up the park after school, having.
I'm all about it. My son is not
That's
7 years.
Giving parents volunteer, giving grants to kids club. Volunteer, bigger committees, volunteer kids.
She's just basically commenting that whichever one.
Yeah, right.
But as long as they
Exactly.
get.
Right, exactly, and that's my point, it's like, we don't have to create some big fantastic program for after school, that would be great. But the bottom line is, families need help with childcare, so let's call it that and structure it in a way that that's what it is, right?
Yeah.
And that,
Figure out
and
what the
it,
true need is.
Right,
What is the true need?
you might, you never know when you have employees who wanna take on a program like that and would say, oh yeah, I could do the daycare for you. And would take on some extra hours or extra programming. In their mind, they may say, I can't plan for another lesson, I can't plan for another program, I can't plan for another teaching activity for 2 hours after my normal workday.
But
They
I
might
might
say,
supervise
I can
kids
supervise kids with
outside.
homework, I can answer a couple questions, I can answer questions about homework, I can get them outside and play and get some fresh air. I can make sure they have some, right?
Because she's giving the example of like the gym provides daycare and it's just somebody sitting there and once in a while they give him like a sheet just to draw on
Right.
something. So that's.
We could probably do something better than that. We could help them with homework, we
Yeah.
could give them a nutritious snack, and we could supervise play.
Could be a whole new department for us, right?
But it's also what's good for the students too, because some of our students don't are here all day. Some students would thrive in after school care, but others, they need to go home.
That's true.
They need to see mom and dad.
It's been a great small meeting, and that's fine.
Everyone's ideas.
It's 6:30. And it's been a great and small meeting. And I want to let everybody know, our next meeting, we're gonna have at the Santa Rita Elementary Library on February 25th, 5 to 6 as well.
So la otra junta que voy a escribir es febrero 25 y va a ser en en la Escuela Santa Rita, en la librería de Santa Rita también.
Tell her, yes.
Yes.
¿Es la misma junta de esta?
They are working on masters.
Es que van a sacar
Yeah.
todo el derecho y luego
Oh,
pero pueden
Never.
no pasar la
I'm just like,
escuela.